brace for Hurricane Bonnie. Hi, I'm Christina Abernathy, and welcome to this edition of Weather Center. A stream of traffic could be seen this afternoon headed for safer ground. First, voluntary and then mandatory evacuations were ordered today from many areas along the coast of North Carolina and part of South Carolina. Law enforcement people we've talked with suggest that if you have not left by now, it's probably best that you stay put and don't clog the highways. We will provide extensive coverage of Hurricane Bonnie throughout the night. We're working on the story in the Forecast Center, and here's Warren Madden with an update.
Thanks very much, Christina. North Carolina's coast is certainly no stranger to hurricanes after Fran and Bertha of a couple of years ago, and now here we are in 1998, and we're watching the final approach of Hurricane Bonnie, and we are looking at the current conditions. This is the latest advisory, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, centered at 31.0 north, 76.5 west. That is about 250 miles now south of Cape Lookout, North Carolina. Top winds still at 115 miles an hour. They have been at 115 now for the past few hours and back into the recent past. And the wind and the movement of the storm still at north-northwest at about 16 miles an hour. Central pressure has dropped about 5 millibars in the past 6 hours since the last advisory, or past 3 hours since the last advisory, at 958 millibars. Our strike probability still along the coast of North Carolina, reaching from about Cape Hatteras on down in toward the Cape Lookout area and heading on down toward Cape Fear. The storm heading to the north-northwest at 16 miles an hour, and it is in this region that we have our watches and warnings. And the hurricane warning still posted now from Chincoteague, Virginia, on down to Cape Romaine, South Carolina, and on either side of it we do have hurricane watches posted. But again, the highest probability of strike is right here along the coast of North Carolina. We are covering this storm not only here from the Forecast Center, but we are also covering it right from the area that could see the effects in the next 10 to 12 hours. And standing by from Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, is Jim Cantori. Jim, fill us in with the details right now.
Well, Warren, we've actually moved our position just to get in a better place in case we have to leave here tonight, we are going to be in a much better place to do so. So we're at the Holiday Inn, the truck's right over my shoulder, and basically what we can do is just wrap up the cable and get out of here if in fact we are going to do that, but that is yet to be determined. But I'm telling you, it's been pretty much a very good day. I've had very good signs of people that have taken this storm very seriously, and it's almost like they couldn't wait for the voluntary evacuation to be issued, and that's what happened at noontime today. And I'm telling you, folks just got out of here. And that's exactly what I've been hearing from several police officers on this barrier island, which, by the way, is what they call the Crystal Coast here. It's about 26 miles long, and there's only 2 ways in and 2 ways out. And those are bridges. And once the winds hit 50 miles an hour sustained, that's the end of it. You're stuck here. So folks need to hunker down tonight and make some, and basically they have until midnight, I would think, before those tropical storm force winds get in here. And I saw before the sunset tonight a band of rain just offshore, so that's definitely coming on in. Speaking of sunset, let me show you our tower cam here. We'll take a look at some of the waves and also kind of pan around, and you can see what has been really a very beautiful day here. There was one rain shower that moved through at around noon and 1, and that's been it. Other than that, it's been just a beautiful sunset. And so much for red skies at night, sailors' delight, because that may very well not be the case as we work here tomorrow. Again, folks, any threat to us that we feel is going to be significant, we will not be here. Our job is to be here to let you know what's been happening on the barrier island and the Outer Banks, and that is people are basically packing up and leaving. Some folks have decided to stay. I won't deny that. I won't lie to you. They have decided to stay. They've ridden out Fran and also Bertha, but they've also boarded up, and they're also making any last-minute preparations as we speak. So all in all, Warren, I think we're pretty good here. And whether we decide to move or not is still yet to be determined, but obviously you'll let me know. Other than that, no rain yet, but we do feel it's coming probably in the next hour and a half. Back to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Jim Cantori, reporting live from Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. And certainly, if there's anything good to be said about the experience of Hurricanes Fran and Bertha of a couple of years ago, it showed people in the area of coastal North Carolina just how dangerous these hurricanes can be. And as Jim mentioned, many people taking advantage of the opportunity to get out of the area early and evacuate inland. So that is certainly some good news that people were taking advantage of that. Joining me now here in the Forecast Center is our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And Steve, we've been watching the storm creep closer and closer to the coast, and now we're in the range of only 12 hours or so away from possible landfall. What can the residents along the coast expect over the next few hours?
Well, the tropical storm force winds aren't too far off the coast. We may get some gusts to that speed with the first rain bands that come in here in another hour or two, but It looks like hurricane force winds will be another 8 hours or so away. And then, of course, landfall sometime midday tomorrow. Plus or minus a few hours. It's too close to call on that.
Right. And the storm is still offshore. As we take a look at the satellite picture here, and we put this into motion for you, you can see a very well-defined center of circulation here. No difficulty whatsoever picking out where the center of circulation is. Where does it look like we're seeing the movement now, and latest course out of the storm?
Well, it has been moving generally in this direction, and it started to slow down just a little bit, and that's usually a sign that it's going to make a little more of a turn. Of course, the official forecast is roughly like this, but people over in this area, don't let your guard down yet. That hasn't made that turn yet.
Right.
And you can see here, we're starting to see, the thunderstorm activity was rather scanty. We're starting to see some bending back around there, so maybe a larger eye wall starting to form there in the next 6 to 12 hours.
Now, as we saw from Jim Cantori, the rain has not quite come ashore yet in many instances, but it is not all that far offshore. In fact, as we take a look at the radar centered on Wilmington, North Carolina, we can show you where the rain is, and yeah, it really isn't that far offshore at all.
That's right. The tropical storm force winds are probably out in this area right here. There's some pretty good rain in here. Thing to remember, we actually had some very large seas out here. We just got a report from a buoy of 31 feet that was basically right about here. And those waves are going to come onto the coast basically up in here the next 24 hours. So we're going to have very large surf, very damaging erosion potential there along the coast the next 24 hours.
And that is one of the big worries we have with any kind of hurricane is not just the rain and the wind, but the storm surge. And quite a level of storm surge is predicted with this storm.
That's right. A Category 3 is typically 9 to 12 feet, and we see here 8 to 12 feet here in the dark orange or red colors there, and maybe 4 to 8 feet on the periphery, assuming the track takes that course. There is one positive thing, though, is if it does come up and take a hook a little more toward the northeast here and parallels the coast a little bit, the storm surge could be a little lower. On the other hand, the wave action associated with a hurricane, it doesn't matter what direction it moves now, it's still going to be high.
Okay, well, Dr. Steve Lyons, thanks very much for joining us. We'll talk with you again in a little bit. We will continue to cover this dangerous hurricane, Hurricane Bonnie, as it continues to approach the North Carolina shoreline. If you have to be away from your TV, you do have another option. Check out our website, weather.com. Point your browser to it for all the latest information as the hurricane approaches the coastline. Let's take it back now into the studio and get the rest of the information from around the nation and your forecast for your Wednesday. Here's Christina Abernathy.
Thanks, Warren. Elsewhere in the nation, rain continues to cause flooding problems in Texas, and you've had some powerful storms moving into the northeast. We can see that on the satellite view. A lot going on out there. Of course, you see Bonnie there, but we also have some wet weather elsewhere into the northeastern U.S. and still getting rain.
Stay with us for up-to-the-minute coverage of Hurricane Bonnie. We're using the latest technology to give you the information you need to know. Watch Weather Center.
Good Will Hunting gives movies a good name.
This boy's genius is unparalleled. I've never seen anything like it.
Winner Best Original Screenplay and Best Supporting Actor Robin Williams.
They need someone who can get through to them, like me.
Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Minnie Driver.
I love you.
You'll love this movie. At home on pay-per-view.
Let the healing begin.
Good Will Hunting. Pay-per-view delivers quality entertainment right to your home.
Oh, boys and girls, it's your radio daddy Jazzhead, and don't tell my boss, but this summer my weekends begin at 7 p.m. Thursday when Red Bank Parks and Recreation presents Comcast Jazz in the Park at Riverside Gardens Park in Red Bank. It's bigger and better than ever with 2 great acts every Thursday through July and August. See your old favorites and some bright new faces, all absolutely free at New Jersey's most beautiful jazz concert series. Comcast Jazz in the Park. We'll see you there.
Tropical weather systems are affected by so many variables.
We constantly monitor the situation.
If someone is safer by watching the Weather Channel, that's what it's all about.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Well, it's time now for Storm Watch and our tropical update. We're going to start you out with the latest on Hurricane Bonnie. Here is the satellite view, and again, you can see that we're already seeing those clouds moving in along the Carolina coast here. We will see conditions deteriorating. The wet weather and the windy conditions are just going to get worse here, and we can also see the center of circulation with Bonnie. The latest coordinates have Bonnie centered at 31 north, 76.5 west. That puts the center about 250 miles south of Cape Lookout, North Carolina. The winds, maximum sustained winds, still 115 miles per hour. The movement to the north-northwest at 16, and the pressure is 958 millibars. We do have hurricane watches and warnings in effect. The watches from Chincoteague, Virginia to Cape Henlopen, Delaware, and then southward here from Cape Romaine to Savannah. Hurricane watches for you, hurricane warnings in between, and the areas shaded in red, so part of the South Carolina coast and then on into the North Carolina coast and for part of Virginia as well. So again, when we have hurricane warnings issued, these are some of the steps that you need to take. Protect those windows with shutters, store items that are kept outdoor or anchor them, fill containers with drinking water, and you want to fill the bathtub with water for sanitary use. And when the hurricane warning is issued, also place valuables in waterproof containers. Stay tuned to the latest advisories and have cash and a full tank of gas. Another very important point to note is the storm surge. This is what we're expecting here. 9 to 11 feet a possibility, battering waves, the potential for a good bit of problems as a result of that, unfortunately. And just to show you the scope of the hurricane here, the wind field that we're dealing with, and you can see the hurricane force winds extend in this area, tropical storm force winds in the areas in yellow, so it's really just a matter of time before you begin to feel the effects of the winds in the Carolinas. Something else to mention is that we do have heavy surf advisories in effect. Of course, that's in place here too, where the watches and warnings are in effect, but heavy surf will be a concern for you well to the north and also here to the south, as far south as Jupiter Inlet, Florida. And a look at the wet weather, you can see that we're already beginning to see it nearing the coast. So again, conditions will be deteriorating as we head through time. The wet weather is going to be headed in, the winds are going to be picking up, and again, this certainly bears watching. We'll have more details coming up next on Weather Center, and a quick reminder that this was sponsored by Home Depot.
Stay with us for up-to-the-minute coverage of Hurricane Bonnie. We'll have reports throughout the night as the storm moves closer to the coast. Don't miss Weather Center just ahead.
This program was sponsored by the Home Depot.
Home Depot is like 5 stores in one.
Well, Home Depot's ideal really is to make sure the customer gets what they need.
This is not a little hardware store. They only have 5 of one type of thing. We have 100 of one type of thing.
We're very proud of the selection we can offer people.
You're going to find name brand quality products.
It's a one-stop
vision, and simply here, this is an attachment that goes on the lens, folks, that takes all the ambient light around and allows it to be brighter. In other words, we can see at night. You can see the waves, you can see the ocean, you can see the sea oats around me blowing around. So no doubt, as we look out toward the surf, we have got an angry ocean out there. This is the first time that we've actually seen sustained winds at over 10 to even 15 miles an hour. So we're starting to get the winds now out of the east, and it appears that as we go on through the night, these winds will pick up very, very quickly, especially given the size of this hurricane and also what Warren and Steve are talking about in the tropical storm force winds as well as the hurricane winds, which extend out from the center. A lot of people took heed of the evacuations. Everyone that's going to leave the island, I think, would be pretty much off the island. But you've got until those winds reach 50 miles an hour, and that's when the bridges are closed. You're going to have to ride it out. I have not received word yet what we're going to do, but we are definitely in a safe position here. If we have to ride out the storm, we will definitely let you know. Let's find out what's happening further up to the coast.
Freeways up and down the coast of North Carolina were jammed with residents today. Evacuations have been ordered for many areas as Hurricane Bonnie moves closer to shore. Evacuations covered more than just people. Ships at a Virginia naval base headed out to sea. The ships are actually better off in open waters than docked. And for those leaving behind homes and businesses, today was spent boarding up the windows. The plywood would help protect homes from high winds. Good evening and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Terry Smith. Our extensive coverage of Hurricane Bonnie continues throughout the night. We're working on the story in the Forecast Center, and here's Warren Madden with an update.
Thanks very much, Terry. If you live anywhere near the coast, from South Carolina north in toward Chesapeake Bay and Delmarva Peninsula, batten down the hatches. Hurricane Bonnie, a very large hurricane, is approaching the coast and will likely be close ashore in the next 12 to 24 hours. We have just received a new advisory from the National Hurricane Center, and we have that for you now. Let us check out the latest details on Hurricane Bonnie. Center of the storm located at, the storm is centered at 31.6 north, 76.8 west. That is 215 miles south of Cape Lookout, North Carolina, so about 35 miles closer inshore than it was on the 8 p.m. advisory. Top winds still holding steady at 115 miles an hour. Forward progress has slowed slightly, but just slightly. It has gone from 16 miles an hour down to 14 miles an hour, but still in a north-northwesterly direction. Pressure is at 965 millibars. It's been fluctuating within about a 5 to 7 millibar range here over the last 6 to 12 hours or so. Hurricane warnings posted by the National Hurricane Center from Chincoteague, Virginia, and that includes from Smith Point south in Chesapeake Bay all the way south to Cape Romaine, South Carolina. So anywhere within this area, even if the hurricane may not make, the eye may not pass close to you, still the range of the width of tropical storm and hurricane force winds is quite extensive with this storm. So just because the eye may not be right on top of you does not mean that you will not experience damaging winds. So be prepared anywhere in the warning area. In the warning area, we have several live crews stationed ready to report the latest details, and we're going to talk to two of them right now. The first one on the mainland side, inland just a little bit from Wrightsville Beach, is our Bill Keneally. Let's start our reports with him.
Warren, good evening to you. It's the 11 o'clock hour now, and officially the barrier islands are closed off. If you're out there, you are out there for the duration of Hurricane Bonnie. Right behind me, by the way, is U.S. Highway 74, and that roadway right back there is about a mile from the actual Causeway Bridge, which takes you onto the barrier island. And I was just talking to the mayor, Avery Roberts, and he was telling me that everything seems to be secured out there. They're very comfortable with the compliance on the evacuation order this time. I think a lot of people have learned quite a lesson 2 years ago with Hurricane Fran. And also got a report that the tide is way up now. The high tide just came in about an hour ago, and it's up on the second tier of the beach. And my suspicion, unfortunately, is the next couple of high tides will be even worse than that. But right here inland, we're pretty hunkered down. We're okay. We're afforded the protection of a building and a pretty good piece of woods back behind me. So we're okay here, but on the barrier island, it's a whole different story. A lot less to inhibit that wind from blowing in off the water. And for a report in Atlantic Beach now, let's go to Jim Cantori. Jim?
Well, Bill, we are on the barrier island, the one they call the Crystal Coast. It's about 26 miles long, and there's only 2 ways off the island, and those ways are by bridge. And once winds hit tropical storm force at 50, or actually greater than tropical storm force at 50, you will not be able to cross that bridge. You're looking at our night vision. Basically, folks, this is an addition to the lens that allows the ambient light that's available at night to be exemplified, and no doubt you can see what's going on out there. You remember a lot of this in Desert Storm. An angry Atlantic Ocean tonight. We've got very, very high seas coming in, breaking all the way to the end of the beaches and to the bottom of the dune that I'm standing on. So this, of course, just concluding the high tide for this evening. And as Bill mentioned, no doubt tomorrow as we get into high tide, the water is going to be a lot higher, especially if we are on the eastern side of that eye wall, or to the east of the center, which is where we typically get the worst surge. Again, everyone in compliance here as well up toward Carteret County, and there's no reason why folks onshore shouldn't do as well with this hurricane, because they have hunkered down all day. They've got their supplies that they need. Let's just hope that it doesn't strengthen and get any worse. Back to you, Warren.
All right, thanks very much both to Bill and to you, Jim. We're going to check in now with our hurricane specialist, Dr. Steve Lyons. We've been talking a lot about the effects of the storm. One of the main effects we're concerned about is the storm surge. So let's take a quick look at where the storm is now, the hurricane is, with the satellite picture, and then let's talk about the storm surge.
Okay, right now you can see the center of the circulation is roughly right in there, a little bit south of that dot. Continues to move in a north-northwest direction. We expect it to take a little more northerly jaunt just before landfall, although we haven't seen that turn yet. And of course the storm surge would always be largest on the right side. Now keep in mind, if it happened to turn this way, the offshore flow, the wind would be this way up here, and in this area we could have some very high surge there as well.
So reaching in toward the Virginia Beach area and then coming down in toward Currituck County.
Correct.
And northeastern North Carolina. Storm surge is expected in the 8 to 12 feet range, and that is on top of high tide, which could occur close to landfall if because most of the high tides in this area are occurring right around midday, and this is when we're expecting the closest approach of Hurricane Bonnie. So we are continuing to cover the storm. Dr. Steve Lyons, thanks for joining us this evening on it, and we'll be continuing to speak with you over the next day or two. Sure. And if you have to be away from your television set and you'd like the latest details on what is happening with Hurricane Bonnie, point your web browser at weather.com for all the latest, and we will be here through the night here on the Weather Channel itself and updating the website to let you know what is happening with this dangerous and quite large storm. Let's head back to the studio now, where Terry Smith will be filling us in on the weather around the rest of the nation, and check on your forecast for your Wednesday.
Okay, Warren, as we look at our Wednesday morning forecast, it is going to be a hectic one for folks along the East Coast. Not only do we have Hurricane Bonnie that's going to be getting ever so close to the North Carolina and South Carolina shore by Wednesday morning, we also have a cold front that's working its way through the Northeast. So it looks like a rainy start to the day for Boston, New York City, down toward Philadelphia, and certainly around Norfolk and the Cape Hatteras and the coastal areas, obviously, of North and South Carolina. Now, if you live north of the front, glorious weather. Beautiful, beautiful day from Detroit and Cleveland back through Indianapolis and Chicago, and then into the western United States. We're still seeing our southerly flow bringing in plenty of moisture, and again, with the heating of the afternoon, those showers and thunder showers will be erupting across the mountain regions. By tomorrow evening, it looks like Hurricane Bonnie could have made landfall. Again, this is a hurricane forecast by the National Hurricane Center, and it looks like that could be a strong hurricane affecting the eastern sections of North Carolina, and some of the moisture extending all the way up into New England. So again, New York City and Philadelphia, you're going to feel the effects not so much of the hurricane, but the cold front nearby with some heavy rains. And we are talking very heavy rains with this hurricane. Some places will probably see anywhere from 5 to 8.
And he's on the left, but you got to go around because it's one way. You can't turn that way.
Get out of here.
ExperiencingTheGardenState.com now.
Each time a disturbance comes off the coast of Africa, we follow that until it develops into a storm or to whatever it does. That way you're prepared and you're safe, out of harm's way.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Storm Watch is sponsored by Rayovac. We start off in the tropics tonight. It's a hurricane, it's a major hurricane, and it's headed toward the U.S. southeast coast. Here's a look at it on our tropical update. Hurricane Bonnie, the second named tropical system this year. And we've got another hurricane in behind that. That is Danielle. Meanwhile, over the Pacific, it's Howard, 120-mile-per-hour winds. But here we've got Bonnie, 115-mile-per-hour winds. This is the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. The movement is north-northwest. It was traveling underneath the big Azores High, the Bermuda Azores High that stretches across the Atlantic Ocean this time of year. And around the bottom of it, that's where all the action is. It emerged around the west side of the high and started to go north. Just missed a direct hit from the Caribbean islands, just missed a direct hit to the Bahamas, but it looks as if it will not miss a direct hit here in the United States. Hurricane warnings are in effect from Cape Remain, South Carolina, all the way up to Chincoteague, including the lower Chesapeake Bay, Pamlico, and Albemarle Sounds. So if you live in North Carolina, parts of South Carolina, and southeast Virginia, problems. Many people have evacuated the coast. Those of us who are hanging around, even inland in North Carolina, at Kinston, at Goldsboro, and up to Norfolk, Virginia. Of course, we're not going to be evacuating, but power may go out. And there'll be some damaging winds here, certainly toward tomorrow morning. So if you're under the hurricane warning, these are some of the measures that you need to take. And check with the emergency management people locally. They know exactly what you need to do. Stay with us here, of course, on the Weather Channel. Tune into National Weather Radio if you have a battery-operated radio, because the wind was going to force trees down. There'll be power lines down, the whole schmear. 115-mile-per-hour winds. Now, in addition to the wind, the storm surge will be tremendous. The storm surge essentially is a situation where sea level rises. So where we normally have the ocean, as this thing comes in to the right of the track, we expect sea level to rise 8 to 12 feet. Wave action on top of that, and there'll be a lot of beach homes that are just reduced to nothing. Tropical storm force winds buffeting the coast here later on tonight. And I'll tell you, we're feeling the effects of this all the way up into southern New England and South Florida with heavy surf and dangerous rip currents. More on this possible deadly hurricane next.
Stay with us for up-to-the-minute coverage of Hurricane Bonnie. We'll have reports throughout the night as the storm moves closer to the coast. Don't miss Weather Center just ahead.
This program was sponsored by Rayovac Rechargeable Alkaline.
Video games don't just blast through your batteries, they blast through your money. That's why you should arm yours with Rayovac Maximum Alkaline. They pack long-lasting alkaline power, but cost less. How about a little one-on-one? Rayovac Maximum.
I challenge you to a little one-on-one. Try Rayovac. If you don't think they're as good as the other guys, you get your money back. You can't lose. I like that.
New evidence. All toothpastes, even regular Crest, Colgate, and Mentadent, leave plaque on your teeth every day. They can be too coarse to penetrate microscopic crevices where plaque and deep stain collect. New evidence. Arm & Hammer Dental Care, the only formula with a high level of baking soda, is better at cleaning plaque away. It dissolves so fine it penetrates crevices where deep stain builds. Teeth are clean and white every day. Arm & Hammer. Evidence. Plaque clean, white clean. Arm & Hammer.
To demonstrate the unique construction of a Simmons Beauty Rest pocketed coil.
I wonder what would happen on our mattress.
John, we don't have a Simmons Beauty Rest.
Individual pocketed coil springs to reduce movement.